A couple of memories come to mind. One, my father was actually very interested in martial arts. And so I grew up in an atmosphere
Mm,
where karate was practiced. And then I later got enrolled in karate and was really interested in Aikido. And then my path took on a very contemplative journey. So my first real memory of it, one is I just remember this giant mural my father had painted on the wall of our rented unit, much to my
mm,
mom's chagrin, of the sun rising over the mountains. And I don't know if you've ever been to New Mexico, but there's a very simple portrayal of the sun, the Zia, with the four rays in every
mm.
direction. And that, just really stuck with me for some reason. And every time I've gone back to New Mexico and Taos, the idea of the connection with nature, with the sun is such a powerful entryway, I find, for spiritual awareness, for consciousness. So that was part of it. And then the other part was really just a sense that there was something more. I was also raised in a very religious household. And I remember there was a lot of reading of scripture. And my thought was, okay, but how do I experience all the
Mm.
things that are being talked about? So that stoked an early curiosity to find out, okay, there's must be something more to this day to day life. And how do I experience that for myself?
Very beautiful. It seems like that yearning of our soul, or whatever anyone wants to call it, there's something in us that wants to know the truth and the answer. And sometimes I know for me, maybe I had a sensitivity, but I wasn't conscious that, oh, there's got to be something better than this. And so it took me a while to kind of navigate all that. But I'm always fascinated with how many people I've spoken to on the show so far who, at a very early age, were already conscious that there's got to be more. And how do I find that? And I find that really beautiful just to see how it doesn't matter what age you are. You could start from the get go. So then once you started having that, because interesting, you can have the concepts like, oh, I heard there's this experience of love or God or universe inside of us, and you can talk about it all day long, but that doesn't mean that's your reality of identifying with who you are.
Yeah, it's a crucial gap. Knowledge and actual experience, firsthand personal experience of something more.
So I know there are many different paths and different ways, and I would love for you to share your own path. And then also what I've noticed for many of us who've done this for quite some time, all of a sudden, a lot of the practices and techniques start falling away on some level and just becomes naturally being who you are, which seems so funny in a way. Cause to me, all this hard, strenuous internal work and battles on some level, then all of a sudden you pop out and you're like, I'm just here in the moment. And it's just fascinating that all this stuff just to get back right here. And it seems almost like ironic or like a joke in a way, like the divine joke of there's nowhere to go. It's just right here, but you're not here. So you have to figure out how to get back here.
Right? It does seem like a cosmic joke sometimes, like the fish searching for water.
Exactly. Exactly. So do you remember once you started having that yearning of there's got to be more, I want to know, what did you do with that?
It was funny. I was reading a lot of books and one just literally popped out at me at the used bookstore in our town. And I started reading it. It was so interesting to me because it was written by Thomas Merton. Here was a Catholic monk, very steeped in the Christian tradition, who's writing about ecumenical dialogue and meeting people in the Vedic tradition and the Buddhist tradition. And it really opened my mind up that, okay, there are contemplative practices, like actual techniques to get there, there. Because I had been struggling with, like, okay, they say pray, they say read scripture, but how do you do it? Like, I really wanted technique. And so that was the long and short of my journey was that opened me up to, I mean, as a 16-year-old to start sitting and trying to meditate and getting enough of a glimpse to know that, okay, there's something here. There's some realm of experience that's new and another dimension of experience almost, but still trying to hack my way into it because I didn't know anyone who was meditating or teaching meditation. And then gradually I found my way after 5, 6 years of sitting with different teachers. I discovered this course called The Art of Living that a college friend turned me on to. And then I did this technique and I thought, okay, wow, now I'm starting to access and enter into this portal almost of that state of mind where there's more clearness, there's joy, there's more of that experience I had heard talk about, but was having difficulty getting to myself. That was the first big entry point for me.
Are you comfortable sharing For someone that does not know those practices or the concept of what they teach at the Art of Living, are you comfortable leading some practices that may help people go from not being able to enter to being able to enter?
For sure. And there are many steps to it, but the core kernel is around breath, which, is very common to a lot of these traditions, whether it's the martial arts, but also the contemplative traditions, where, like you said earlier, Jonathan, so often we're struggling with our thoughts, our mental world. So, instead of struggling with the mind, trying to think ourselves out of whether it's a funk or anger or not being able to sleep, using the breath as a vehicle to bypass some of that mental agitation and carry us over to a more peaceful, stable, centered state. So the breath having this power to change the emotions, to help us manage our mind is the root core of it. And yeah, happy to guide through a short, condensed experience of that and what it can do for us.
It'd be wonderful. Thank you.
And just so this isn't redundant for people who have been listening to your show for a while, would alternate nostril be good?
Yeah, whatever you feel, if you were to try to give somebody something you feel, okay, this is the nugget that I think could be the most helpful to the most amount of people, that's wonderful.
Okay, let's do two things then. Just have a bit of fun and explore it, right? The experience precedes the thoughts and talk about it. So one is even just to like take our left hand, place it on the chest, and then with our right hand on the belly, and just observing to start. When we breathe, when we inhale, what's the movement in the torso, in the chest? Is the chest rising or falling with the in breath? Is the belly expanding with the in breath? Or is there not so much movement? It might feel a little stuck or just not moving so much. So invite you listening to give it a shot. We can close our eyes if you feel comfortable and you're not driving. Just taking a moment to become aware with the inhale and with the exhale. And a couple more breaths, just observing light, gentle awareness. And two things can start to happen here, which is interesting. One is that the very process of pausing to notice some observation of the breath itself can induce a bit of gentle calm to the system. And then the second is that we return our attention, our awareness to the breath, and we become aware of that breath body connection. Many people find that compared with a baby, you watch a baby breathe and its whole belly expands, its whole body expands. Somewhere along the way, through stress or whatever, sometimes the body clenches, it gets caught in tension, and the breath might not flow so easily. The body might not expand so readily. So now we'll do a few conscious expansions. So breathing in, expanding the chest and the belly fully. As we breathe out, letting the belly deflate, letting the chest deflate. And just like a small kid, a few long, deep breaths, expanding fully with the breath and exhaling fully and letting the body deflate like a balloon. Couple more times, deep, full breath in and breathing out completely. One more time, gentle awareness of the expansion of the body and breathing out, relaxing. You can lower the hands, returning back to normal breathing. Taking a second to check in and observe what has shifted with that short practice. Maybe the mind feels a bit calmer, or there's a fresh observation about your own body and breath. We can open the eyes. So that's a quick introduction to just see how it's almost like a check-in. We're moving throughout the day, we're breathing throughout the day. How often have we really checked in with our own body and our own breath? First act of life, we breathe in. Last act of life, we breathe out. Contained between these two breaths is what we call life. And breathing is such an integral, essential part, yet often ignored or overlooked. But there are all these cool practices to harness kind of the inner treasure of the
Mhm.
breath. Shall we try one
Wonderful.
more to kind of
Yeah, please. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So this one will work with it a little more in a practice, more than just becoming aware of it. So left hand, we can have the thumb gently touching the pointer finger. Other three kind of stretched out can rest on our left lap. Right hand, thumb on the right nostril, ring finger on the left nostril. The middle finger and pointer finger gently resting between the eyebrows. And let's breathe in and out. Closing the right nostril with the thumb, breathing in left side. Closing left, breathing out right. Breathing in right. Closing the right side, breathing out left. Breathing in left. Closing the left, breathing out right. Breathing in right. Closing the right, breathing out left. Breathing in left. Closing the left, breathing out right. Breathing in right. Closing the right, breathing out left. Breathing in left. Closing the left, breathing out right. Breathing in right. Closing right, out left. In left, out right. Breathing in right. Breathing out. Breathing in left. Breathing out right. Breathing in right. Breathing out left. Continuing at your own pace, switching after each inhalation. Gentle breaths in like you were smelling the fragrance of a flower. Light attention on the breath. In left, right. In right. Closing the right, out left. In left. Closing left, out right. In right. Closing the right, out left. And you can relax the hand. Just observing, checking in inside. What's the state of the mind and the body? Another normal breath in and breathing out completely. You might notice there's a bit more inner quiet. A little bit of the breath can be a great entry into a relaxed, calm state of mind. When you feel ready, you can slowly open the eyes. How was that for you, Jonathan?
It was nice. I felt a convergence of more energy right where my fingers were and the breath. And it felt to me, even though I was breathing deeply, that the inhale was all kind of condensing into that area and like more in a fine point. And so, what I was going to say and ask you about, I'm going to get a little more granular with you since you have a lot of
Go for it.
experience with this. So, when I first started meditating, it was a battle because the inner confusion and turmoil, whatever's going on, just life. But I remember always not quite being in sync with the teaching. So, for example, at one point, I was around a lot where the teaching was the third eye. But for me, somehow, I was naturally felt like I was residing in the back and above my head. And it gave me like this witness perspective that felt very, very natural for me. And then at some point, the different places I was around, the teaching became switching to that. And after I'd been doing that for a long time, I felt like a naturalness coming more into the center of my brain with looking out through my third eye. So it felt like I had this witness perspective above, but then from the center of my brain out through my third eye, I felt that I was just fully engaged in the moment with a calm presence, but also having this broader perspective. And so that's like where I am today with it. It just feels that that balance of experiencing, connecting to the bigger picture to reminding that. But at one point, I used that as also as an escape from fully engaging in life without knowing that. It was just a very powerful witness perspective, which was really beautiful in so many ways. But comparing it to today, it feels like I check in and keep that, but really engage in the moment with my presence and love and root. So I guess I was curious in your own teaching and experience and lessons you've learned from your teacher and all within the brain. How do you all decipher all that?
Yeah, it's beautiful. You hit a couple of really big points there. One I really relate to is this idea of struggle. I think so often we get caught up struggling with our mind or wrestling with something. And that's a big key peacekeeper. And the mind is to realize that we don't need to struggle with our mind, that in fact, struggling with the mind can be counterproductive. The body and the mind have different laws, if you will. Like the body, when we're training, whether it's for martial arts or a marathon, sometimes the more effort we put, the more we grow, whether it's muscles or precision. And the mind is the opposite, right? With the mind, it's really learning the art of relaxation and letting go. And when we're finally able to let go and just be, just be, that's when, all these natural qualities, serenity, peace, joy, that are already there inside start to bubble up more and more and come to the surface. So that's one aspect, which goes a bit back to the cosmic joke that you mentioned earlier,
Mhm,
because it's not that we're searching for something outside to fill us. It's
mhm,
how do we reconnect with our own selves and establish ourselves to reconnect with that state of joy and peace. And then when it comes to the practice, like you mentioned, a big surprising element, which again echoes your point, is so much of it is learning to be natural,
mhm,
learning to rest and abide in our own nature, in our own state of awareness and joy. And
mhm,
so sometimes it can be useful, it can be effective to a point, to be mindful, to be mindful of something, to have an anchor point that grounds us in that for some time. But that's the other, I guess, segue in my journey of meditation. A big learning from Gurudev, my teacher, was the importance of letting go
Mhm.
and the importance of, okay, so say in this practice, I'm going to be aware of the breath, but at a certain point, it's so the integration happens when we release our effort
Mhm.
and we're just there. And so that's, I think, a really important balance, that to, return to just being
Mhm.
relaxing and letting go completely.
Yeah. No, no, I love that. And I'm going to comment about the brain and the breathing for a moment and ask you a question about it. So for me personally, like today I'll speak, it does feel like the most natural thing. I remember many times being around a lot of meditators, and one of my friends who was kind of connected with us somewhat, but it was more of like just a good, wise friend too. He would say to me, "Man, it feels like you guys are trying to be like in the spiritual Olympics, like trying to race to enlightenment." And I was like, "What?" But then I really looked at it. There was like this angst around spiritual people at times trying to have this spiritual enlightenment experience and get somewhere. And at some point, I really, for me at least, just realized like that's trying to get something instead of what just is. And my question to you is, my intention is never to judge a path. It's to try to understand it more and bring more awareness for me and for others. So I know people have gotten really into like the intense breathing in some of the traditions and then trying to achieve these different levels and entering different doors and all these things. And I'm not disbelieving that that's not there, but somehow my mind, I feel like if whatever someone wants to call it, God, the miracle, the spark, the intelligence of the universe, it seems like that is the creative energy, and our job is more to rest into it and then find our natural expression instead of like trying to achieve some spiritual experience. And so I've just seen that with myself and many people I know for a long time that have gone this path. It just seems like, oh, you want to be a doctor? Okay, you're working really hard to get into med school and you get your license and you're practicing. And it seems like that same doer, of course, is going to approach spirituality. And the real gift is, in my mind and experience, can we let go and be part of this wave of life that's happening and be in the ride of it from love and awareness instead of trying to create something that has already been created. We just have to relax into it. So I was curious your experience about being around a lot of spiritual people with your teacher and other students and also teaching. How do you see all that as far as achieving these states of planes of consciousness as opposed to just relaxing into what is?
Yeah. And it seems twofold, because on the one side, our mind can be tricky, right? Our mind can usurp our best intentions to just relax, let go, and be with what is. And so, on one level, it's helpful. It can be in our best interests at times to have a regular practice that helps to put us there. At the same time, if we're aiming to achieve too much, that itself takes us out, right? It's almost like the thing that bounces us off the doorway. The wanting to get somewhere itself is an obstacle. And so I found it's a bit of both. When I teach these retreats, it's like, yes, here's a toolkit you can use as a daily toolkit, like taking a shower for your mind, right? Like we take a shower for our body, we brush our teeth, but where do we learn what to do for our mind and emotions? So there, it's just very precious to come into an environment, learn some skills, and go home with techniques to help keep the mind and emotions, more settled and calm. And at the same time, to your point, not to be chasing an experience. Sometimes the mind is a little agitated, being with that, not getting worked up about the being worked up,
Hmm.
and, just continue to move on with life, to keep moving. We don't want to get
Hmm.
stuck in anything, whether an
Yeah.
experience or a problem on the outside.
Right on. And so, in your experience in training, and I'm sure you've been around some of this where you're doing really intense breathing. And do you see that as, and I'm thinking out loud as I say this, as one way of just, it's so intense that your mind and everything's so engaged with that. And then the intensity of the breathing, the energy kind of flushes some stuff out that you don't have to necessarily do it because the intensity of the breathing does that. But in the end, it's settling back and coming back to the same place as here. Or do you see it also as people like doing that to try to like get to somewhere?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. The first one where another beauty of the breathing, we do something called sky breath meditation or Sudarshan Kriya, which uses rhythms of breath, not too intense, but it is very effective at flushing out some of this emotional baggage or tension or stress from the body. And that way the mind isn't wrestling with it, but through the breath, it has a vehicle, an exit point that it
Mm,
can go out. And then afterwards, we don't just keep on that intense hurry after something, but in the rest that follows, that's where comes up this experience of just being, because we've already had a vehicle to let the stuff exit.
that makes sense. So I don't know the exact practice, but you're going fast and then you settle.
Exactly. Like you're putting in a bit of the work, you're doing certain breathing rhythms and then
Hmm.
relaxing completely. So there's this
Hmm.
balance between doing and some
Yeah.
effort and then just letting go. Because often, if it's just letting go without guidance or practice, people's minds tend to wander. And so, relaxation can become sleep or it can become daydreaming or it can become hyperfixating on a problem or solving our work week ahead for type A personalities. So it's really good, I find,
Yeah.
to have some process to guide people through, and then
Hmm.
the letting go is effective.
Right on. And then, so with your practice and training with the mind, is the main thing that you do with the mind is to focus it on the breathing?
In the initial stages, early on, it's a great entry point. Even I found myself included. I'd been meditating for about 6 years before I stumbled upon this. And through the breathing, it gave me such like a leg up, a head
Hmm.
start, almost like a rocket pack, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if people are starting out, it can be so hard to deal with the mind.
Hmm.
You sit, you close your eyes, your mind goes wild. People don't know what to do. There are all these funny memes now, right? Like I'm trying to be calm and
Yeah.
it isn't listening. So yeah, it's a very effective tool. And then afterwards, then we can, I find, build on that. We can layer on practices that are a little more subtle, where
Hmm.
we can really extend the duration and depth of the meditative journey.
So if you were to, and it's okay if in your system, if you're not allowed to share the practices, I don't know if you are or not, but what, as far as if somebody was to say, okay, well, in this path, you're learning how to use the breath to calm your system and just be and be in a relaxed, open state of mind and heart and breath and body. What are the next trainings, or I don't know if I want to say levels, like what are they working with and where are they trying to take you to?
Well, to your earlier point, which is, very true, at some level, we're coming back to ourselves, but in a way that we're not struggling.
Hmm.
But in terms of like the actual program and training, we usually start with what we call the Art of Living course, part one. And that's where we establish this baseline and give people tools and techniques with the sky breath meditation. We always do it in a live guided environment so that people come with questions, doubts, frustrations from past experiences, how to handle those so that people
Hmm.
don't feel alone or left alone in learning a practice and can also do it correctly. And then afterwards, there's a lot of potential to build on that with silence, whether it's
Hmm.
a silent retreat or deeper meditation practices. So it does ladder up very nicely to more and more freedom, in a word, more
Hmm.
being
Yeah.
ourselves. It's funny. Have you seen the Odyssey movie that came out?
No, my wife is Greek. And actually, her family's from Ithaca. And so,
Really?
yeah, yeah. So we're planning on seeing it, but we go there pretty regularly. And the first time I went, my father-in-law took us out under one of the trees and read us the story of the whole path of there. So it was really fascinating, full circle again.
Well, it's funny, it's become such a big news again, thousands of
Hmm.
years later,
Yeah, yeah. I heard the book's like selling off the shelves right now.
right? Which is,
Yeah.
wonderful to rekindle some of that ancient stories. The other interesting thing I'm just reflecting on is you got this hero's journey where his whole goal is to return back home, return back to Ithaca. And in some ways, it even mirrors our own mental journey. Again, this idea of the joke, where at some level we have peace, we have love, we have expansion, and yet in some other level, it's lost to us. And so it's interesting how these ancient fables and epics have these layers of meaning where we're also making our way home to Ithaca, home to ourselves, and to a place where we can really be at ease.
That's one of the things I feel and hear myself saying the most, actually, a lot of times is that I feel like I've returned home in myself. And it just feels like this rest at home. And it's such a beautiful thing. And it seems so simple. You know, you've heard teachers, oh, you can awaken right now or whatever it is. And it's true, but it's not true because we don't know how to deal with all the stuff that seemingly interferes with that. But it's already right here. It's just how do we rest into it? There's so many different ways and different personalities. And I think sometimes it's really important to see, that's one of the themes of this podcast is one spirit, many paths, because even with what you do and what you teach, every person doing that is doing it in their own unique way, even if it's the exact same technique, because it's their own unique processing of everything. So I think it's really important. And I've not done this sometimes, of really trusting your deep intuition, even in the spiritual realms when something doesn't feel right, or teachers don't feel right, or people feel like they're not living with integrity, to trust. Because it's so easy to be so open and so vulnerable that if someone's not clean as a teacher, they can dump their own stuff on you trying to make it spiritual. And then there's a lot of confusion. In the end, like in my own experience, it did expose things in me that allowed me to grow a lot, but still, like a dysfunctional relationship's a dysfunctional relationship. And if you're able to not be in one, it's healthier, and to see whatever you can see about yourself without having to go through it. But sometimes that's just part of it. So I always think it's really important for everyone to know that they already have this wisdom, this home in them. And if it ever seems confusing or hard, just try to rest and give it space to listen, because it's there. And a true friend or teacher or whatever is just there to support you to feel that in yourself and not think you need them as your bridge into God, because it doesn't matter what path it is. I think that can get confused by the person that's the entry path, the one that has the path to the door, and the people trying to get in the door. So I always love to remind, and it doesn't matter, like say martial arts, self-defense, it's the same. It's like you to know that you have that in you that can speak up for yourself or can say no, whatever that may be.
Very true. And I find it's part of the beauty of a really good teacher is that they take you back to yourself and that there's an element of self-empowerment and encouragement for you to expand your horizons. And I remember I was searching for 4 or 5 years and sitting with many different people before I felt a sense of connection that really felt right and true after I met Gurudev. But it took some time and some
Yeah.
due diligence, and then
Hmm.
being with the path and realizing, okay, there's something really good here that I'm not getting to on my own that this
Yeah.
person seems to have and is offering to others.
Yeah, and I want to speak about Guru Dev in particular and all you're doing, because I don't know a lot about it, but I looked, and the amount of work in the world that you all are doing with an organization for humanity is so beautiful. And to me, very aligned with, again, the second premise of this podcast is that spirituality is so practical, because
Yes.
when you're home and you're present, your creativity and your interest of just being present and doing good work is so prominent, because there's not the need to prove, or you're not trying to do something on the outside to get validation. You're doing it because your heart and soul is expressing this goodness. And so But the level of work and the depth and the breadth that you all are doing is just mind boggling. I looked at it one day when I first got information about you and I was like, wow, they're doing it all around the world from every level. It doesn't matter if it's food or education or whatever it is, bringing love and awareness into that through service and through action. I'm going to give you a moment to talk about Guru Dev in a moment, but going back to the whole teacher thing, I remember many years ago hearing a teacher shouldn't need students to be a teacher. So that's
Mm,
one part. And true teacher, like you're saying, brings you back to yourself. So anytime being in a community or having a teacher like Guru Dev, if you just feel purity and it's all about empowering you to be that place in yourself and do good in the world, then it's a healthy relationship where you know both people want the best in the most expansive version of yourselves. And that's such a beautiful relationship, whether it's a marriage or a business partnership or spiritual relationship or a community. And to seek that out of authenticity of heart and soul for everyone to rise, not just a teacher or someone in the relationship rising by pushing someone else down and making them dependent upon them. So I think that's really fascinating to see that. But then also, again, going back to the practicality of the work, I'm assuming Guru Dev is like a visionary with all this. And then you must have put in incredible systems to actually implement all this because it's mind boggling what you've all done. How would you describe, first of all, Guru Dev as far as in my experience of people in this kind of light, there's a playfulness, there's a wisdom, there's a naturalness, there's a childlike quality, a knowing and a depth and a love and a joy. So I'd love to hear about that in your experience. But then also, how have you all done so much work in the world?
you took the words right out of my mouth. So it's very similar. There's a sense of, love and connection, also just heightened awareness at the same time. Like it's not just mushy mushy, but
Mm,
like, oh, okay, like someone who's so aware and is not, missing a beat, it seems, and is also able to expand that and empower others with that is something I've been really impressed by lately. Is saying it's one thing to have a really great state of mind and be established in yourself, but then to be able to teach that to others that they also experience that is a skill in itself. And then he's also trained 40,000 trainers across the globe now and really empowered people in such a decentralized way to run with projects, whether it's for the environment or for rural education, especially education of people whose parents and grandparents had never gone to school. That's a project that we're really passionate about. Transformation for people in prison is another big one. People that are trapped in cycles of violence oftentimes. So giving them tools so that a way out does become more possible. And a lot of it is inspiring people. That's been the other big lesson, creating a platform that people can be included in that.
So maybe with people being so empowered that when people, for example, say a career, once you start knowing yourself more as a soul, you could really do anything. But there's usually something that people feel really drawn to, and maybe it's a skill and also a need. So maybe people that are so empowered now that they're like, hey, I could go do this thing in education because that's a place I gravitate toward. And then there's enough of you where they may say, hey, does anybody want to support this project? And we get together and do it with different skills. It's beautiful. Anyone that's listening, this is the first time I've heard of this organization, but if you go to their website and you look at the vastness of the work they're doing for humanity is just really, really remarkable. And this podcast has been a gift for me to see people like you that are so dedicated individually and then somehow are taking it to a bigger scale.
The other trigger that's really interesting is when people open up through the practices, there's also this generosity of spirit that happens. One thing that Gurudev says the spiritual journey is going from being a somebody to being a
Mm,
nobody
hmm.
to being an everybody. And
I
so
love
as
that.
isn't it juicy?
It's your experience when you have gone through or going through that process, you know it to be the truth.
Mm,
Experientially, you know, being somebody trying to get something done or do something or get validation to like, wait a second, you just disappear and you just become one with everything. And you feel like you're nothing, but in the nothingness, it's everything. And it's such a experience that kind of gives you a reflection of your own growth.
Yes. And then in that space, you realize that everybody also, you're connected with them. And that's where a lot of this service angle perspective dawns of let me see what I can also do for these other everybody's that I'm connected to.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes it's mind boggling to me. And I know I could see the complexity of dealing with my own mind and the challenge I went through of returning to home, like we spoke about. So sometimes I have to remind myself of that and the complexity of each person with that. And then two people trying to get some resolve, let alone a country or the world. But it's just mind boggling to me that we all want to feel love. We all want to feel connected. We all want to feel a brotherhood and sisterhood, that somehow we've been so tricked within ourselves, societies, to want to create this division of us and them and better and worse. And my God says this and your God says that, instead of just letting it go and just be unified and support humanity to thrive and take care of each other and the environment and to celebrate. And instead, there's just so much of the other. But this podcast, again, has been such a beautiful thing for me to meet people like you that I knew nothing about. And not only to see the work you've done, which I have so much respect for, but again, the expansiveness of reaching out to the world is just really, really beautiful and really, to me, very mature spirituality, unless somebody's path for some reason is to be in a cave or monastery. But I feel that we're here. And so being here in the society is kind of where it makes sense for our work to be. It's just being able to navigate it from the place of the inner monastery, of being able to remain there. So I'm going to go back again to something else I wanted to ask you that I didn't. So in my experience, when I was like meditating a lot, with people meditating a lot, it was so much about going up, going up, going up. And I remember I knew some different body workers and people, and they're like, "God, so many of you guys are like, you're so cut off from your lower body." And I was an athlete, a martial artist. And I was like, "What do you mean?" But at some point I did realize that there was so much going up and I felt my heart open and all that, but there was nothing about rooting into the earth. And then I got really into Tai Chi and Qigong, where you talk a lot about that. But back in '06, I met a Sistema martial art, which comes from like the Spetsnaz. And this man lives in Canada. He was like such a peaceful guy, religious, spiritual warrior type of thing. But what I saw for the first time in my life, for me, I know that Kung Fu and stuff shows this, but I saw a body, even though they wouldn't say this because they're Russian Orthodox. I saw a body in my experience of meditation moving like meditation in relation to life and martial arts. And so it hit me so strongly because the thing about returning home, like you were saying about the mind, that it needs to rest where the body develops skills. I really have experienced more than ever that the same thing of letting go is there in the body, that the body can move like water in a very natural way and be very powerful and very sensitive and very rooted. And so it makes sense that it's like that, but it's just so, again, so mind boggling that so much of physical training is like tensing and going, going, going. And when you relax and let go, it's so different. And it seems like with yoga and Qigong, obviously ancient practices, that people were aware of this and were doing this, but somehow it seems to me like the body has gotten like a bad rap. I know somatic therapies become big and all that, but the body seems like an incredible entry point of, if you can put your body in a healthy, relaxed posture, to be able to breathe better and to be able to have a calmer mind. So I was curious, in your training and your school and all that you all do, is there any work with the body as an entry point as well?
100%.
Yeah.
And there's specific positions that can help to open up both the
Hmm.
body, the mind, the heart, and then also incorporating that as part of the practice. Oftentimes, there's this mental concept I found, especially in North America, Europe, that meditation or the journey is a very mental activity and it can become limited or restricted to the layer of the mind. But like you shared, we're integrated beings. So if you look at the original path of yoga, like what you said about finding a position that opens these other things up was always part of it. It wasn't the end. Like it wasn't like we have yoga classes today where it's 80, 90% moving the body, but this acknowledgement that the alignment of our posture of our body can also be a gateway that facilitates access to
Hmm.
deeper layers of experience. Is very inherent and integral to the tradition.
Great. Because I heard once, I don't know if it's exactly true, but that in Japan, there's not like body, mind, spirit that doesn't exist. It's just one, whatever
Mm,
that word is. And like you were speaking earlier, having things to do with the body is very helpful with the breathing, with the brain is super helpful. But in the end, once you're doing that, when you rest, then they all just become one. So it's like one big body, breath, brain, spirit, all becoming one again, like that. Nobody to everybody. I think in some ways is that where we're doing these things and then all of a sudden the body, breathing, brain are just isness. So it makes sense how they just have that one thing, if that's true, how they say it. But for us to be able to take it apart, but to realize that they're never separate. I've experienced, I'm sure you have plenty of people have like this thing where you're off in the sky, say, and still there's that awareness. But if you had the presence, you could be like, oh, but my body's still rooted in the earth or something. So I think there's always all of it happening, and it's great to use the body. Since I've had this change in the way my body moves, it's made my experience of meditation and spirituality so much more grounded and so much more enjoyable because it's not flighty. It's just right here. And so I encourage anyone that's on a spiritual path, if it feels right, to find something that not only you exercise your body, but it's an entryway of feeling the sensitivity to
mm.
your breathing and your brain and your spirit. So
Yeah, beautifully said.
I'm thankful that in the end, spirituality is very simple. It's just like, oh, just be here and be in your heart and be authentic and connect to everybody. And so I think it's really beautiful that it is that simple. And we do need some practice and training and techniques to help us just to get back to here.
Yep.
Well, I love connecting with you and seeing what you all are doing.
I appreciate it, Jonathan, and also enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you for all you're doing. It's really lovely to see because we all know the experience of feeling separate and feeling the pain of conceptually not knowing and then finding out conceptually there is an answer. And then the space, like you said, from understanding something to knowing it as who you are is a beautiful journey. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things when you hear truth and then when you actually experience it as yourself. And
Yes.
that's like a true birthday.
Yeah, beautifully put.
Well, thank you again. I appreciate it.